Hey everybody, it's time for another episode of Doc Lil Talks Comics, and tonight I've got a very special one for you. It is actually the second issue of The Thing on the Doorstep, which was originally an H.P. Lovecraft story, and it's been adapted by the team of Simon Birks, artist Willi Roberts, and Rob Jones, and it says is primary letterer and sometimes writer of comics. So you get the continuing story here with this amazing artwork of Edward and Daniel, the two friends in Victorian era, and Edward meets Aseroth, and Aseroth is at Innismouth, which is a sanitarium, asylum, that sort of thing, I believe. And she's creating a storm with her mind. And in the meantime, you get to see them become closer and closer. And it starts with Aseroth sitting there across from him and putting her hands on him. And he almost felt like she had swapped places with him. So she's into some dark and occult things, very much like Edward Sr. And because Daniel, his best friend, named their child Edward Jr. after his best friend. And that's kind of creepy. So Edward Jr. is walking around and he sees this woman and he sees something much darker than what other people are seeing. And a lot of people see the darkness in Aseroth, and they see that she's more than just a goth, chick that these, 20 years ago would have been following Anne Rice, An Interview with a Vampire, all of the gothic stories like Crimson Peak. She would have loved all that stuff. But in the end, Daniel and his wife Claire realize that something is going wrong with Edward Sr. And eventually, Daniel pays a visit to his friend, and the house is very empty. There's not very much there. He said Aseroth was getting things together from the car, but the house is derelict. It's a void, okay? And through all of this, there are a few different pieces, we'll say, artistic pieces that Aseroth has brought into the house that kind of feed off negative vibes to Daniel. And in the end, Daniel says, if you ever need help, Edward, and he says, I don't think that'll be necessary. And he's like, promise me that if you ever need help, if things get too dark, if you read a book that you shouldn't, if things take an evil twist, promise me that you'll let us know if you need anything at all. And he says, I promise. And that night, Claire and Daniel are talking, and she says, all right, what vexes you? He says, is it that obvious? And she said, of course it is. Is it Edward? And he says, yes. His situation worries me. His state worries me. And she said, I'll tell you what. I don't have anything to do tomorrow, so I'll go up to the house and I'll go check on him myself. And then when I come back tomorrow night, we can talk about, our solutions. What I think and what you think versus this versus that, and try to come up with a solution to help your friend, our friend. And he says, I would very much like that. And they're in love. Whereas Edward and Aseroth it's like Edward got sucked in by Aseroth. And it's almost like she's a succubus or something like that she's feeding off of his obsession with the occult. But his level of studying the occult is not on the same level as her. It would be the difference between somebody reading Lord of the Rings and then the real Gandalf the Grey or the real Saruman. You get an understanding of magic. You get an understanding of what it can do. But Aseroth is almost a character that's given her entire soul to this occultism, to this darkness. And early that next morning, then Claire sees Edward, and Edward's, running off and getting into a car, and she says, how odd, because he's never driven before. And they go and visit a week later, at the house that Edward and Azeroth stay at. And he looks very tired, very drained, you could say. And in the end, they're like, what is wrong with you? Dear God, you look terrible. And well, actually, he comes to their house and knocks on the door. And she says, Daniel, Edward, why won't you come in? Won't you come in? And he says, there's no time, I'm afraid. And he tells them that he and Azeroth are taking a trip to Europe, and they're going to be studying ancient scriptures and ancient writings and going down the occult rabbit hole, okay? But it doesn't seem like he's having fun anymore. Has there ever been a time where you would go out and hang out with certain friends and go read certain books, watch certain movies, and then one day it's just not the same? Or if you have a very close friend or a significant other, and then you get back years later, or you see that person years later, and you're like, hey, I hadn't seen you in 20 years. Let's go get a cup of coffee and catch a movie or something. And you go and try to watch a movie with that person, and it's just not the same. You try to rekindle the friendship, relationship, whatever it is, and it just doesn't work. So there's a darkness in Azeroth that Edward can't see because he's too close to it. Sometimes you're too close to see the danger until the snake bites you. And that's pretty much what is going on here. So they're going to go to Europe, they're going to disappear, and at the end, his friends ask for a forwarding address. Hey, just so we can send you a postcard, you send us a postcard, that sort of thing. And he says, Azeroth wouldn't like that, I don't think. She doesn't like people interfering in what's going on. So you get an understanding that this is somebody that's been sucked into something bigger than him. It's really fun. It's really exciting. Lovecraft is I haven't read a lot of Lovecraft, but Simon Birks is taking this book and masterfully adapting the story that H.P. Lovecraft wrote probably 100 years ago now, almost 100 years ago. So I can really say that I'm happy that Image picked this up, and I'm glad that it's going to be a 5-parter because I can't wait to see what happens in the next issue. Did you guys pick this up? Have you been reading it? If not, I think you're missing out, and you're only 2 issues in. So go back and see if your shop can reorder it or see if you can find a copy on the shelves at your LCS. And then hit me up in the comments and let me know what you thought. By the way, a friend of mine, friend of the channel, told me the other day that I should check out Deathstroke, issue number 1. And that was written by Tony Fleeks, and I believe the artwork is Carmine Di Giamenico. That's fun stuff. I read it online. I didn't pick up a physical copy of it, but I read it digitally. And I never have really cared for Deathstroke and cared for Deadpool, but it's a lot of fun, and it brings layers to the character of Slade Wilson. So if you hadn't had a chance, check that out as well. But anyway, that is The Thing on the Doorstep, issue 2 of 5 from Image Comics with Simon Birks and Willi Roberts. Thanks for checking it out, guys. I got a lot more content coming up. I hope you're as excited to see it as I am to bring it to you. Have a great day.